speaking of horses, and in our program today, we're going to learn an awful lot about the Sugarbush Draft horses. Actually, it's called the Sugarbush Harlequin Draft horses. We've assembled some of the horses and many of the people with the association. It's a very rare but a very unique and very, very wonderful breed, and we got a lot of things to tell you about it. So stay with us here on Speaking of Horses as we learn about the Sugarbush Draft. Hey, speaking of horses, we're here at the Virginia Horse Festival. Tracy Meisenbach, correct?
Yes.
Is my guest. And a couple of things that Tracy's been doing here. Number one, you've been doing some bidding clinics, correct?
Yes, I do a bit clinic, and I also have a booth here with our Stark Naked bits.
Stark Naked bits? I guess I missed the name of that. Okay, we'll get into that. We'll delve into this later. But also, you are involved, and I think a year or so ago had some of the Sugarbush Draft horses here.
Yes, I'm the executive director of the American Sugarbush Harlequin Draft Association. The Sugarbush Harlequin Draft is one of two American draft breeds that has ever been created, and we are bringing the breed back from the brink of extinction. It was down to 12 horses just a couple of years ago, and now we're up to over 100 horses, and the breed is growing in popularity, and we're really, really, really pleased with the response we've got from the public supporting our resurrection of this breed, and they've got quite an interesting history.
Well, we're going to delve into this a little bit because I think the history was interesting. I remember announcing the breed demos with your draft horses in the arena and reading your script, I think a couple of different places maybe over the last year or two.
Yeah, we've been up to Briarfest. We've been over to the Virginia Horse Expo that was at the Old Dominion thing. We were at the Virginia State Fair draft show here last fall, for the last 2 years in September.
Well, I know where I've seen you. I've seen you obviously here, and I also am the announcer of Briarfest here. So I have done
You've
that.
seen us for a long time.
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
You've been Briarfest is exactly where it is every July.
Yeah.
I see you at Briarfest. But it's a very interesting breed, and I've read your script enough to. It takes me a while, for things to soak in, but I've read your script enough that it's really intriguing. And so give us the history, if you would, of the Sugarbush Draft.
Well, the breed started really in two places that were kind of thinking of the same idea at the same time. Back in the 70s, Michael Hanna, who has since changed his name to Michael Muir in respect for his grandfather's heritage, was an Appaloosa breeder, and he bought an Appaloosa race stallion named Apache Double. And Apache Double was bred by George Hatley, who was the executive director of the APHC for 31 years.
Okay.
And he's only sire of $2 million in progeny, winning progeny. So for an Appaloosa racehorse, he was quite high end. He's in the Appaloosa Hall of Fame. And then Mike decided to rescue a draft stallion. There was a Percheron draft stallion at a sale. His name was Charlie Dagus. He was in terrible condition. So Mike brought him home and just rehabbed him, turned him into this amazing looking horse, and decided to start crossing this horse on his daughters from Apache Double, which at the time was kind of out of the loop with Appaloosas because they were trying so hard to get rid of the image of the draft history where the cavalry had introduced draft breeds into the Nez Perce herds and tried to turn them into plow horses. And so while the Appaloosa industry was going in one direction, Michael Muir turned around and went in the opposite direction. And during this time, he also found out that he had MS. So he was not able to ride and compete anymore. So he wanted to develop a high-end driving horse that was of warm blood type. So he took his Apache Double daughters, which the Appaloosa breeders would have killed for, and he crossed them on Charlie Dagus, and he created these warm bloods, these leopard-spotted warm bloods. And he continued breeding these horses. He actually created a hitch that had three sisters in it, Stonewall Stella, Stonewall Blanche, and Stonewall Scarlet. And to bring awareness of MS, he drove them from California to Florida.
The rural American lifestyle. It's how we work, and it's how we play. It's how we learn and how we enjoy the finer things in life. how we take care of our animals and tend to the land. It's a way of life, has been for hundreds of years. Now there's a whole new way for rural America to watch TV.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Buck. I'm president of the American Sugarbush Harlequin Draft Association, and we're here to talk a little bit about the association, how we got going, and where we're going from here. I got into it about 4 years ago. My daughter introduced me to Sugarbush Harley's Classic O. He's the big draft that we saw earlier getting harnessed in the Sugarbush harness. He's come here to Breyers 4 years in a row, and we saw him out in Texas with some mutual friends, and I fell in love. And I told my daughter, I says, you know, I'm getting ready to retire, and I don't know if I really want to get into more horses. It's kind of winding down now. Well, once I saw him in person and I met some of the folks. Okay. Yeah, I met some folks in Texas, and also some folks the first year we came to Breyer Fest, Tracy Meisenbaum and Stephanie Adame, Heather Crispin, some of our board members that all got together with a common interest to save this breed, because we saw that there were a lot of horses out there and kind of fragmented. So we started talking together. I actually had purchased Sugarbush Harley's Classic O from Everett Smith. He's our breed founder. He started the Sugarbush Hitch Company back in the early 90s. He actually had been doing breeding of horses before he had the Sugarbush Hitch Company, and he liked the Percheron, and he was looking at different horses and kind of looking at things to kind of increase the notice of his horses. He knew what a good horse looked like, and the man started working with doing more breeding. He met some folks out in California, Mike Muir, who had a common goal with a lighter draft horse with the spots, the Appaloosa breeding. That Mike Muir started the Stonewall Sport horses a little bit before Everett did, and he had an ad in the one of the magazines, trade magazines, and Everett contacted him, and as we say, the rest is history. And they got together. They produced from Stonewall Rascal, the grandsire to Sugarbush Harley's Classic O. From him, we ended up, Everett got Sugarbush Harley Quinn. He's the most famous, most people recognize. He's the Harley that everybody notices as a Dalmatian draft. They kind of see him and his picture, they said, he looks just like a Dalmatian. And I says, then you've met a Sugarbush. So Everett and I have talked quite a bit. Mike Muir and I have talked quite a bit. I'm proud to say they're some mentors of ours. They're helping us to guide the organization. They're helping us to, as mentors, both of them have been inducted into our Hall of Fame. And we feel that having them still in our fold, so to speak, really helps us to know what the idea was and stay with those goals. And we feel with the clean genetics that we require, we're the only registry that currently requires for breeding animals to be genetically clean in a 5-panel test if they're a grade horse, and also JEB1 and PSSM1 if they're draft horses. So they do have to pass this as well as top conformation, and we look for the best of the best. So if you think you have a Sugarbush out there, you have some type of a cross, some type of a draft with LP characteristics, look it up on our website, and maybe you've got a Sugarbush.
Remind them of the website.
Yeah. So look us up on our website. It's sugarbushharlequindrafts.com. Or you can just look for ASHDA, ASHDA. That's our abbreviation. It's long, but it's worth the look.
Okay, I'm Monty Getz. I work at Churchill Downs in Keeneland Race Course in Kentucky. I'm not a breeder of the Sugarbush Draft, but I do have a Sugarbush Draft that I love dearly. He's very well known all over the country, all over the world. He's a lead horse for the Kentucky Derby. I run a big pony business at Churchill, and he's my favorite horse that I ride. I use a lot of thoroughbred horses, but I'm into the Sugarbush Draft now because I really enjoy riding them. They're nice horses to work with, laid back. He's 2,000 pounds, and he can warm up thoroughbreds better than the thoroughbred ponies that I have. As far as that goes, he's laid back, none of them rattle him. And I was a little skeptical on using him at first, thinking, you know, when I did buy the horse, I thought maybe, you know, he might scare a lot of horses as big as he is. But I found that they love him. All the horses that even hook up to him, it's like their security blanket. He's so big, they just cling to him like magnets. They don't get all shook up. And when I do have a bad horse, he does the job. He loves what he does. He does everything I ask him to do. He's so laid back. He's probably, you know, one of the few. He is probably the only pony in the Kentucky Derby that works with no earplugs in his ears or ace in him or anything like that. His disposition is just wonderful. And I got into this Sugarbush Draft by Tracy Meisenbach, and she called me up after she saw me in the Kentucky Derby with Harley, and that's his nickname, by the way. But anyway, she asked me about he would fit the Sugarbush Draft, and I said absolutely. So I came to the Breyer Show last year, and I enjoyed it and got to meet the Sugarbush Draft horses, and I love the breed. And I'm always shopping for more of them. I may switch all my thoroughbred. And I bought him off Rebecca Buck, and I think he's going to be a very nice Sugarbush Draft. He's more athletic, more thoroughbred look, and I'm really anxious to try him too. You'll be seeing him on TV. Working the Kentucky Derby, hopefully next year. He's young yet, though. We don't want to overdo him, but I'm really high on the breed. I love the breed, and the more people at the racetrack, Harley is very well known. They all love him. They see how he works. They just enjoy watching him, you know, and he's happy. He's a horse that wants to please you in any way that he can, you know, and does his job, and he does it perfect, and that's about all I can ask out of the horse, you know.
We're going to inject one more thing here because there's a lot of myths about draft horses, about feeding programs and about various things that people just assume a draft horse requires a lot of feeding, requires different things. I'd like you to comment a bit on how that compares to the thoroughbreds you work at the tracks.
Well, believe it or not, everybody says, "Oh my gosh, I'd hate to have to feed this horse," and this is the truth. I have a lot of thoroughbred lead-up horses, and they have to have so much more grain to put the weight and keep the weight on them to make them look good. And this horse, the Sugarbush Draft, would just amaze you. This horse only gets 1 scoop of grain in the morning when he's working, and 1 scoop at night is all the grain that horse gets. If I had that breed in my stables and got rid of the thoroughbreds, I would not hardly have a grain bill. It's remarkable the weight they carry, and no more grain than you have to give them. You give them good hay, and I don't know where he gets it, but for some reason, he's not getting it from the grain that I give him, because he only gets 1 scoop in the morning and 1 scoop at night. And that's when he's working.
They are our family, and we only want the best for them. No standing water means clean, good tasting, algae-free, mosquito-free, and virus-free water. No risk of electric shock, no risk of fire from faulty wiring. Cool water in the summer, warm water in the winter. Water delivered fresh from the water supply at 50 degrees year-round. Drinking Post Water.
Well, we're here looking at the Sugar Bush draft horses. We're actually at Dryer Fest in Lexington, Kentucky, where we caught up with Sugar Bush. And we got a baby here. And the baby's name, Tracy?
Ash. This is Lord Xavier Ash.
Okay, we'll just say Ash. But what a cute little draft bull we have here. How old?
He's weaning, so about
He's a
3
weanling.
months.
three, 4 months older. Nice weanling, and he wants out, you can tell. But they're wonderful horses. We're going to keep telling you more about the Sugar Bush draft right here.
Yeah, this harness was presented to us from Everett Smith. He's our breed founder, and we purchased Sugar Bush Harley's Classic O from Everett in 2013, and shortly after we started discussing using O to drive and our program to drive. And Everett, since he had started the Sugar Bush Hitch Company, which then became the basis for the Sugar Bush breed, then it was only fitting that I felt that we should try to acquire the last custom harness that he had made. And it's very fitting tribute, we feel, to show O in that. And at Flint Ridge Ranch, our ranch in North Carolina, we are actually preparing to show all of our horses in harness as well as under saddle. And we are going to be showing in memory of the Sugar Bush Hitch Company with permission of Everett Smith. So this is quite an undertaking here. As you can see, the harness going on to several pieces. This was custom made. Everett had this hook so that when they went on their events, that it made it very easy for them to put this harness on or off. So there are some custom features to this. And the harness was made to actually fit from a regular horse size to a full large draft. So you can see here Tracy is adjusting it to make sure that it fits. We've done a few modifications because we are only ground driving here, so the harness isn't exactly as you would see it hooked up onto a hitch. Be able to just throw it over your shoulder and throw it up there. Here, right. Where did that brush go? Oh, stand still.
I'll hit it. I met my husband 1997, and I had one horse, a gelding. And then after that, he had 17 mares and a stallion, and I was hooked. Went to school, did animal science, learned the breeding thing, and here we are. And then in 2009, Monkey Boy, our stallion, is registered as Majestic Arrows. He was born. I didn't know he was born yet, but he was born for me. My husband said, "Why do you want one that's crossed with draft?" I'm like, "That's perfect. Intelligence and beauty." Okay, so he goes to Washington State. He comes back in 2010 with a yearling. His name was Magic, but by the time he got home with him, his name was Monkey Boy. And I had to have him, so he went and got him. He went through snow, ice, and everything just to get him for me. Anyway, we get him home and baby him, love on him, and find out that he's just, you know, a big love bug. Mixed with, and then now that's all we want to do.
But after the first ones hit the ground, and it just you're a totally different, intelligent, and to train.
But say that how you sugar, and this is how you got into it, and now you're bringing more bloodline in. So talk about that a little.
After we had Majestic Arrows, aka Monkey Boy, we raised him and we started breeding him. I spotted the most biggest plump draft Appaloosa I ever seen, and I did research on, found out they were called Sugarbush, and I think I contacted through website or somewhere. Might have been somebody gave me some info, but I ran across the Sugarbush site, and I was like, oh my goodness, I've got a Sugarbush. I didn't know it. So we did a conformational analysis, we did testing, and he got approved, and the rest is history. Our babies are just wonderful. Well, at Rockin' K Ranch, our ranch, we do the lighter boned Sugarbush because we use Frisian draft blood. We do have a Percheron mare at the house, but I haven't got her approved yet. She will be, I'm sure. She's awesome. But until then, we deal with Frisian blood, the lighter variety. And they have produced lots of lighter draft, dressage. They're very versatile. And if we keep any of our offspring to breed in the future, their percentage, we have to breed up. We have to breed to a higher, bigger bone draft in order to have registered offspring. So we will probably pick out a nice colored, handsome guy named Harley. But we'll see. We'll see how that goes and how big our mares get and who we breed to. But yeah, we're looking to breed forward.
You can't get enough out of me on that, because they're the most docile, lovable, entertaining horse you'll ever own in your life. Extremely smart. If they can figure out what you want, they'll do it willingly. There's no trailer training. It's not forcing them into the trailers. If you step in, they beat you in. If you go to get out, they beat you out. Walking through hay rings, going over obstacles through creeks and water, they don't care. They just go wherever you go because they want to be with you. They're just an amazing creature.
Good. Let me make sure we got audio. Well, that's a brief look at the Sugarbush Harlequin Draft Horse Association. Thanks for joining us right here.
He paid a record price for it, $100,000. Apache Double is the first and only Appaloosa to go over the $2 million mark in career in winnings of his gift. He's a great-grandson of Ray Count, who won the Kentucky Derby, and a maternal grandson of APHC Hall of Fame horse Apache. Along with the breeding Appaloosa racehorses at his Stonewall Stud Farm, Michael Hanna took an interest in drafts and driving. He purchased Charlie Davis, a purebred Percheron stallion, foaled in 1973, who became the foundation stallion of the Stonewall Stud Book and an important influence in the development of Stonewall Sport Horse. Michael bred Charlie Davis to the daughter of Apache Double called Stonewall Dottie West. They produced Stonewall Baby Jane, who is a unique American breed that also traces back to Europe. The spotting comes from the American Appaloosa, but most of the draft blood comes from the Percherons, which originated in the La Perche district in France. Percherons find their history in books, spices, and art brought across the European continent. As more and more of the spotted horses were bred, and as equines increased in size through selective breeding, they found their way into different classes of society and different uses. Riding, driving, heavy work, small ponies to large drafts. Soon every draft horses, they set spotted stock wherever Spanish colonies were formed. Spotted horses were listed on ships' manifest for Cortez. However, it was the French king Louis XIV who sent a leopard-spotted Breton stallion to the governor of Quebec in 1685. A drawing of him is found at the Codex Canadensis. This is a record not only one for the spotted horses in the Americas, but the first draft horse. Marco Polo definitely brought word of spotted horses back from his travels to the Far East. And in all likelihood,
They are our family, and we only want the best for them. No standing water means clean, good tasting, algae-free, mosquito-free, and virus-free water. No risk of electric shock, no risk of fire from faulty wiring. Cool water in the summer, warm water in the winter. Water delivered fresh from the water supply at 50 degrees year-round. Drinking Post Water.